The whole goal, again, is to share your knowledge, your life experiences with others so that it helps their life. I mean, in the end, we're all human. We all want connection. We all want to belong. And I'm trying to find a way to cross-generational talking, cross-generational respect. So why did I tell you everything about my family? Well, it's an opening and a portal for you to do the same with your family. Hello, friends. Welcome to Empowering Generational Gold. This is our second video. In our first video, I described the reasons as to what prompted me to create this channel. Didn't like how people were treated as they got older. And of course, the old idiom that, life goes too fast, and it really does. So I am trying to do something to get more of the generations to be more respectful to one another and actually to learn from one another. Because the older generations have life experience that the younger generations, well, they just don't have that yet because they haven't lived as long. And our life experience with their technology, the younger generation, can help to join us together. Now, in the last one, I discussed family, sort of a project to find out more about your family. I am about to be 61 in May, and my grandparents unfortunately passed back in, I would say, in the 90s or so. So I'll talk about my grandmother on my mother's side. She was a church organist for a Mormon church. She was really a mom of, I think she had 2 sons and 5 daughters, and I mean sandwiched, like 1 boy, 5 girls, and the last one being a boy. My mom was about 4th in that rung there, somewhere in that range. Yeah, I think actually 3rd or 4th in that range. But anyway, my grandmother would do preserves, you know how you would can the preserves and can jellies and stuff like that. She was really great at that. And she was a good homestead mom, and she took care of the things that needed to be taken care of. Strict disciplinarian, you wouldn't want to cross her, and I learned very quickly, don't do that. And but she really took a shine for me. She loved me very much. As for my grandfather, he was a commercial fisherman. He was a boat owner and captain of his own boat, obviously. And he would go out 3 times for like maybe a month at a time or maybe a little longer. And they would go out for tuna fish run, they would do Dungeness crab, and then they would do salmon. So yummy on all 3, right? And that was something where my grandfather really loved me. I'm a talker, as you see. And he would say, when we would go on the trips to, when I was young in California, or Northern California, he would say to me, I want him to come with me because he's more entertaining than a radio. He keeps me awake. There's no way I can fall asleep with all his questions. And of course, since I was a child, I was always very, very inquisitive. And my grandpa appreciated that. So, and one of the greatest things I loved was meeting with him when he would bring in the Dungeness crab. We have the boiling water ready on the dock and put in the crab, and oh my God, fresh crab from the dock is just unbelievable. Move on to my father's side. My father's side, my grandfather was he was back in the 50s and the 60s, probably 40s, 50s, and 60s. He was the town pharmacist, which was a pretty center of influence back then in a Northern California town. I don't know much about my grandmother on my father's side. I believe that they were going through some kind of separation, so I really don't know too much about that. But I found out a lot of good things overall about my grandparents and who they are and how they lived. I wish I'd have known more. I wish I would have had the knowledge that I'm trying to share with you now so that you can really gain a lot of generational knowledge of your family lineage, and probably will find things that would surprise you. So my question is going to be out for you is, what have you found out about your grandparents and your parents? Did you find anything that surprised you? Even at the age of 60, do some digging. If your parents are still alive, ask them about their parents, and go one step further, ask them about their grandparents. And you'll learn so much about the family lineage. Now I want to talk about my mother and my father. As I said in my last video, my mother was 18 when she had me, and we were both in the baby boom generation. She's at the very beginning of 46, and I'm at 64. So as I was saying about my mom, is that she had me way too young. There are some advantages to it, and I will go with that, and I want to tell you about my mom. So let's go with the positives about my mom. Very fit, very firm, very active. She was an athlete on almost every imaginable level. My mom could ski almost like she's an Olympic skier. She would do the moguls. My mom rode on a motorcycle. My mother played racquetball. I mean, you name it, she pretty much did it. Very good tennis player, very fit and very competitive, which she taught me to be very competitive. In fact, I'll give you a little story. When I was 13, my mother was 31, very young. And boy, she wanted to teach me a lesson in racquetball, and she would do the kill shots low, and I was like, oh, you want to play like this? And eventually I learned to get better. And when I started doing kill shots on her and hitting off the back wall to the front wall, well, she didn't like that too much, and after a while she's like, okay, we could stop this. My mom was really, really competitive, and it drove me to be resilient and strong. My mom would run in 10K races. My mom would race cars, dirt, on track. But on another note too, how cool is my mom? When I was 5 years old, I was at Woodstock. My mom took me. I think my mom at that time had to be, I don't know, 22. So young, you know. It's one of those things, 22, 23, and I was 5. She did the best that she could. Her home life wasn't the greatest. Competition amongst all the girls, and the men were mostly spread out, I think, by about 20 years or something like that, from the top to the bottom. But nevertheless, there was a lot of competition with a lot of the sisters, which didn't necessarily make life easier. You know, competition can sometimes make you do foolish things. So I don't want to go down that path with it now. I want to keep this all in the positive because, you know, hey, who is perfect? I've been a parent. I've got a 33-year-old and a 36-year-old, and believe me, I'm not perfect. You know, and they'll be the first to tell you that. But I do love them, and I'm very proud of them. They have worked hard for where they are, both college educated, and that's a testament to them, not to me. They're the drive that made that happen, and that makes me happy. So now I'll just follow up with my father. Again, my father got together with my mother. They were kind of like high school sweethearts, and not too far long after graduating high school for her, I was born. So, you know, she didn't really have much of a sowing your wild oats, if you will, whatever term you want to call it, being single and getting out there. She was pretty much went from high school to mother, and that was hard. And my dad did the best that he could with all the situations that were going on, but eventually they really didn't stay together. And the Vietnam War kind of cinched it with the Tet Offensive. My father had to be called in, and my mom pretty much didn't want to be a part of any of that, and she pretty much said, we're leaving. Once he got into basic training on the West Coast, in Portland, I believe it was, he was then shipped overseas to Vietnam as a rifleman. Very tough, very respectful for my father, very hard. And she decided to find someone who was being discharged from the Army honorably. And we went from Northern California to New Rochelle, New York. How's that for a complete 180 turn? So life turned me from a West Coast California boy to an East Coast boy. And I remember the first time I came in 1968, I think it was November of 68, and there was snow on the ground, and I did not want to get out of the car. I was like, what is this? I don't like this. So why did I tell you everything about my family? Well, it's an opening and a portal for you to do the same with your family. I think that you will be amazed at what you will find out. Absolutely amazed. And it's something that you should be sharing. Now, I have some great ideas that I would like to share with you of how you can relate with one another. So, number one, board games. Pull out the board games, all ages. Doesn't really matter, right? From the ages of a teenager right up until 99 or wherever age you are. You can all play a board game together and take that opportunity to talk to one another, find out about one another. There's great games out there. There are fun games like Sorry, and there are 4 more players. Try to concentrate on those games. Okay, 2 or more is great, but get the family, do 4 or more. Play the game of life, you know? I think it's up to 8 players or something like that. Trouble is a lot of fun. Those are all like 4-player games. Find things to do together. Another idea, watch movies together. Now, here's a challenge for Grandpa. Say, the children, show them a movie from your generation and say, just watch this. Tell me what you think of it. But then, in return, Grandpa, you have to watch something from your grandchildren's generation. You have to be flexible. If you want them to watch about you, then watch about them. And it's a great way to show what life was like back then, because it's kind of like Hollywood parrots a little bit of what's going on in the real world a little bit. You know, for instance, smoking was a big thing for grandparents back in the day. Anyone smoked. Well, nowadays that's looked as lunacy. Things were different. Sometimes just viewing that through different periods, you can say, whoa, that's interesting. So find activities, go out, go to a park, go and talk. You'll be amazed at what the things that you'll find. And that's your generational gold. You've heard me refer to it as the golden egg. Well, if you embrace and share what you've gone through, we all love to talk about ourselves, right? Here's the opportunity to do so. I want to tell you some fun stories that have happened with me, happened in my life. And I'm also going to go out there and introduce you to people who I know who are fascinating, just fascinating. And the whole goal, again, is to share your knowledge, your life experiences with others so that it helps their life. I mean, in the end, we're all human. We all want connection. We all want to belong. And I'm trying to find a way to cross-generational talking, cross-generational respect, because, as I said, I don't like the state of how we take older people and just kind of throw them in a retirement home and forget them. That's not right. That's wrong. We need to protect our elderly. They are the life sources. They are, if you will, they are the supercomputers because they've lived it and been there. And wouldn't you want to learn from someone who's been on this planet, survived all the odds, it's been around 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, maybe 100 years? How could you not learn from that? So that's what this is all about. So thank you very much again. And I will put a 3rd video out quite soon. And on that video, I would like for you to start exploring your younger generation, about them. But right now, I would still like to keep this on having the younger generation come and learn up to the older generation. But it needs to be cross-generational. Don't ever get me wrong. Because you need to learn from your kids. And you need to learn from your grandkids. You know, they have things to say. They have insights that we may not be able to home in on because we're kind of set in our ways. And we don't need to be set in our ways. And sometimes the younger generation gets us to be less rigid and a little more flexible. All right, thank you very, very much. Again, my goal is to cross-generational talk with everyone. Pass on your great knowledge to the younger generation and respect the younger generation because they have intuitions into things you're like, oh, I didn't even see that coming. All right, thank you so very much. Again, I'm Todd. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe.